I had learned to do integrals by various methods shown in the book that my high school physics teacher, Mr. Bader, had given me. It showed how to differentiate parameter under integral sign. It's a certain operation. It turns out that that is not taught very much in the universities. They don't emphasize it. But I caught on how to use that method, and I used that one damn tool again and again. If guys at MIT or Princeton had trouble doing certain integrals, then I come along and try to differentiate under integral sign, and often it worked. So I got a great reputation for doing integrals only because my box of tools was different from everybody else, and they had tried all their tools on it before giving the problem to me. Who is saying this?
Richard Feynman.
Richard Penman is saying this in one of the literature. This is available, and that is why this tool is amazing tool, provided we have control on that. Okay, so Pranav was already aware of this dialogue. I hope he's not aware of the problems that we are going to solve. So basically what we are trying to do is, if you have been given a definite integral in only one variable x, we will force that integral. If it is difficult to integrate, antiderivative is not easily available, then by suitable substitution, we will convert the given function into a function of two variables, deal with it, use derivative under integral sign, and if we are lucky in the end, we will be able to get back the original function with respect to the parameter that we have introduced, and with some special values of that parameter, we could arrive at our final answer. So let me just write down the derivative under integral sign. Capital F of parameter is equal to integral of a of parameter to b of parameter f of parameter and variable with respect to variable, and hence ddp of f of p, we have said integral a to p b of p partially derivative with respect to p f of p comma v dv plus f of b of p comma p, or maybe I should write it in the opposite sequence, because for variable we are substituting that. So p comma b of p. I mean, this order does not have any significance because it is two variables. Derivative of b of p with respect to p. It is not partial derivative, it is regular derivative, minus f of p comma a of p d of a of p upon d of. Okay, so to start with, if b of p and a of p are constants, then ddp of f of p happens to be equal to integral a of p b of p del dp of, now for all practical purposes you can use the same symbol for f here. I am just writing it, f of p comma v dv. This is the partial derivative. So for all practical purposes, what happens is derivative with respect to p outside eventually goes inside the integral sign. So derivative enters the integral sign. You differentiate this function with respect to p and then integrate with respect to it. So that is how it is. Let us take a simple example. Consider f of x comma t is equal to 2x plus t cube bracket square. So integral 0 to 1 f of x comma t dx is equal to integral 0 to 1 2x plus t cube bracket square dx. Is this okay? Now we should do this in two different ways. One, by direct antiderivative, because this is easy, doable. So you find out antiderivative of this directly and get the answer. And second, by derivative under integral sign, you find the derivative and then find out the antiderivative and check the answer and verify that yes, if the function is all right and if both these guys are constants, then derivative goes inside integral and we get the answer. So just do it for me and cross check whether you get exactly the same thing back or not. X plus t cube raised to 2 antiderivative is, this will become 1 upon 3 2x plus x cube raised to 3, so 2x plus t cube raised to 3, and then this 2 will come in the denominator, 1 by 6 2x plus t cube raised to 3. Is that right? Now this antiderivative you are supposed to evaluate between 0 to 1. That will be your actual answer. Is that correct? So if you evaluate this between 0 to 1, then you get 4 by 3 plus 2t cube plus t raised to 6. Okay. And if we do it via derivative under integral sign, then d dt integral 0 to 1 2x plus t cube raised to 2 dx is equal to integral 0 to 1 partial derivative with respect to t of 2x plus t cube raised to 2 dx. So we have to differentiate this quantity with respect to t considering x constant. So integral 0 to 1 2 inside bracket 2x plus t cube into 3t square dx, which is equal to integral 0 to 1 12t square x plus 6t raised to 5 dx, which is equal to antiderivative of that is 6t square x square plus 6t fifth x to be evaluated from 1 to 0, that is 6t square plus 6t fifth, and if we differentiate this we get 6t square plus 6t fifth. This answer and this answer is same. So what you can do is derivative which is outside the integral sign, if these are constants, can be taken inside and perform the partial derivative. That is what is just the cross check with some easy function. Now,
सर
श्लोक हाँ बोल.
सर कांस्टेंट कसं डिटरमाइन करायचं?
For integers n greater than 0, integral 0 to infinity x raised to n e raised to minus x dx is equal. I mean, just solve this without considering derivative under integral. I think we have done this earlier. You cross check and get me the answer in RHS if you remember very well. Otherwise, do it right now. We can do it for n is equal to 2 or 3 and then generalize for n. So integral 0 to infinity x raised to 3 raised to minus x dx, integration by parts, u into integral of v x cube minus e raised to minus x to be evaluated between 0 to infinity minus integral of u into derivative of v. Okay, that means this is when you put x is equal to infinity here, you get e raised to minus x tending to 0. When you put x is equal to 0 in the first term, x cube becomes 0. So first term after definite integral is 0, minus minus plus 3 comes out, integral 0 to infinity x square e raised to minus x. So one level less. If this was I3, we say I3 is equal to 3 times I2. But then let us check what happens to I2. 3 times integral. Now, are you convinced that the first term of the integration by part is going to be 0 and second term is going to be integral of u to derivative of v to x dx. So that is again, this was plus 3 times into 2 times into integral 0 to infinity x e raised to minus x dx. Fair enough. So it has got to 1 less, and therefore if I do it again, it will end up being 1 times, okay, let us do it. This is 3 into 2 into integration by parts. So first term is 0 minus integral of u into derivative of v, which is 1 dx, which is equal to 3 into 2 into 1 integral of e raised to x 0 to infinity dx and integral of e raised to x minus x, no, sorry, minus x. So e raised to minus x is minus e raised to x minus x to be evaluated from infinity to 0. So it is 1 upon e raised to x, as x is tending to infinity, it is 0. So minus 0 minus minus plus 1. When you put x is equal to 0, you get 1, and therefore the answer is 0 plus. So the answer for the I3 is equal to 3 factorial. I4 will be 4 factorial, and therefore given integral is n factorial. Okay, this is Euler's formula. Okay, x raised to n e raised to minus x dx. But in the end, what we have got here is, integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus x dx is equal to 1. Okay, so from here, this is the simplest integral that we can do. So suppose we want to start from here and introduce a parameter. I mean, we are learning application of derivative under integral sign. So if we introduce a parameter for any t greater than 0, let x is equal to t times u, then dx becomes t du. T is a parameter, and therefore the integral becomes 0 to infinity t times e raised to minus tu du, which is equal to 1. Okay, now t is a parameter. So as far as derivative, this integral with respect to du is concerned, this is constant, and therefore we can write 0 to infinity e raised to minus t u du is equal to 1 upon t. Okay, and that is why t is strictly greater than 0 and not equal to 0. So now let us differentiate both sides. d dt of integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus tu du is equal to d dt of 1 upon t. Please do this and let me know what we get in the left and what we get in the right. Partial derivative of e raised to minus tu with respect to t. Partial derivative of e raised to काय मिळणार तुम्हाला minus u e raised to minus tu du is equal to 1 minus 1 upon t square. Now we are not used to u, therefore we can always change it to x. Integral 0 to infinity minus x e raised to tx minus tx dx is equal to minus 1 upon t square. You can cancel this minus sign out and you will get integral 0 to infinity x e raised to minus tx dx is equal to 1 upon t square. Okay, let us do it again. d dt of this check what you will get, and you do it couple of more times and do it n times eventually, and you will end up getting Euler's integral formula. If you keep doing it, eventually you will get the final formula, which is going to look like integral 0 to infinity x raised to n e raised to minus tx dx equal to n factorial upon t raised to n plus 1. This is more general formula that we are getting, and now if we put t is equal to 1 here, we get the Euler integral formula. If we put t is equal to 1, we get integral 0 to infinity x raised to n e raised to minus x dx is equal to n factorial. So this is more general that we have achieved. For different values of t, you will get different values in RHS, and that is going to be true because every step that we have performed now is legal. Check whether you get this. f of t is equal to integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus tx sin x upon x dx. Okay, so if our f of x comma t is equal to e raised to minus tx sin x upon x, then del t, partial derivative of f of x comma t. Now again, the limits are constants. I mean, they are not functions of t, 0 and plus infinity. Therefore, only one term will survive in derivative under integral sign. So we separately find out the derivative, partial derivative with respect to t, and then find out what is f dash of t. Just perform this operation and let me know what is f dash of t that you get. Here also t is greater than 0 need to be mentioned. Okay, so if you perform the partial derivative of this, you get f dash of t as integral 0 to infinity with minus sign outside e raised to minus tx sin x dx. Right? Now, if you look at this integral, integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus tx sin x dx, this is one of our standard integrals that we have studied. So you must be aware of antiderivative of this. So do this, find out what is antiderivative, and then find out the value of that and write it over here. And then let us compare this LHS with this RHS. Get the RHS done. This is exactly equal to minus 1 upon t square plus 1. So f dash of t is this. We should not mess up with minus sign. Correct. And now we know the antiderivative of this RHS. Therefore, this is derivative of f of t. So we can get back f of t by integrating the new RHS that we have got. So f of t was originally 0 to infinity e raised to minus tx sin x upon x dx, which is going to be equal to minus tan inverse t plus c for t greater than 0. Check whether this is understood, because this is our standard integral. Okay. Now from here, I give you some work. Hence prove that integral 0 to infinity sin x upon x dx is equal to pi by 2. So do couple of steps in between and get this final result. This is interesting and important result. Sin x upon x otherwise is not having a simple antiderivative and it's difficult to integrate in a closed form. This is a function of t and t is varying from 0 to plus infinity. So as t tends to infinity, what will happen to this function? This sin x upon x, absolute value of sin x upon x is going to be less than or equal to mod sin x upon x is going to be less than or equal to 1. So this is going to be bounded function, and absolute value of the integral to the left we have already found out equal to 1 upon t in earlier case, and as t tends to infinity that will tend to 0, so this LHS is going to be 0 as t tends to plus infinity. As t tends to plus infinity, tan inverse plus infinity is pi by 2, so you will end up getting minus pi by 2 plus c, and therefore c is equal to pi by 2. Okay, so your f of t becomes integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus t x sin x upon x dx is equal to minus tan inverse t plus pi by 2. Okay, and if we want this special value, then we should put t is equal to 0. Then this term becomes 1, and hence you end up getting this very, very important result. Sin x upon x as x tends to infinity is equal to pi by 2. I don't know whether you are appreciating these examples or not, but they are producing wonderful results. One more, and then we write down the condition on when this works, or maybe one or two counter examples when the substitutions will fail, and then we write down the statement for our academic interest. When is this derivative under integral sign going to work, when it is not? Okay. Now, let us take one more example. Integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus x square by 2. Let me make it 56%. Okay. E raised to minus x square by 2 dx is equal to root of pi by 2. In fact, I mean, either from this or integral minus infinity to infinity e raised to minus x square by 2. It is just 2 times this dx is equal to root 2 times pi, root 2 pi. Okay, but we are not looking at this because we want to concentrate on x greater than 0, and eventually this is going to be double of this, something like that, and we will concentrate on this. So we will call this integral as I. That is what we would like to evaluate. So LHS is called I, and now I give you a function, you process it and check whether you get this result or not. So getting that function is critical, which I am trying to give it to you directly. For t belonging to R, now this is t belonging to real numbers, f of t is equal to integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus t square, e raised to minus t square, and in the raised to form only 1 plus x square divided by 2, that is e raised to everything whole divided by 1 plus x square dx. Okay, so I think if this is the starting point, you deal with this because this is function in parameter. Again, the boundaries are constants, therefore derivative under the integral sign only one term will survive, partial derivative wala term. Process this and check eventually whether you get I is equal to radical pi by 2 or not. So I leave complete processing to you now. Okay, note capital F of 0, if we put t is equal to 0, we are going to get pi by 2 answer. And if we go to what is the value when t tends to infinity, it is going to be 0. This is the information that we have. So now f dash of t is equal to integral 0 to infinity minus t e raised to minus t square into 1 plus x square by 2 dx, which is equal to minus t e raised to minus t square by 2, which is constant with respect to x, integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus tx bracket square by 2 dx. Put y is equal to tx implies dy is equal to t dx. So f dash of t becomes minus e raised to minus t square by 2 integral 0 to infinity e raised to minus y square by 2 dy, which is minus I e raised to minus t square by 2. Correct? Now, integral of f dash of t from 0 to say b, and b will tend to positive infinity, dt is equal to minus I is going to be constant because it is a number, 0 to b e raised to minus t square by 2 dt is equal to basically f of b minus f of 0, which is equal to minus I times integral, is this correct? What am I trying to do? Integral e raised to minus t square by 2 dt. Okay. And then as b tends to infinity, we get
सर
pi by 2. एक मिनिट मला लिहून कंप्लीट करू दे, मग आपण डिस्कस करू. Minus I square implies I square is equal to pi by 2, and hence I is equal to root pi by 2. हा, काय डाऊट आता विचारा.
सर मध्ये एका सेट मध्ये टी आहे ना.
This integral which is in the box is very much required in probability theory and Fourier analysis. Basically, when you learn after getting into engineering college, you will get to know the applications of this, and this integral will be widely used. So, but the function, if you look at this function, 1 upon root 2 pi e raised to x square by 2, it is called Gaussian. And again, the varieties of this Gaussian are going to be useful in probability theory. We will have a look at one more variety of this Gaussian, and it is called higher moments of Gaussian. For every integer n greater than equal to 0, we wish to compute integral minus infinity to plus infinity x raised to n e raised to minus x square by 2 dx. Okay. Now let me stop recording. You also start thinking about this a little bit, and then we will decide how to go about it. Okay, we will begin with the Gaussian that we have done before this. This is our starting point. And then for t greater than 0, we will replace x by root t times x. Then we get this. And now by derivative differentiating LHS and RHS couple of times, more number of times, we will eventually get the function in terms of n if we differentiate n times. So do this now and see what end result you get. Correction. The starting point itself I might put it wrong. It should be root 2 pi. Okay, so and shall I write the final generalization? This will, if you keep differentiating with respect to t, LHS and RHS, eventually you will get integral minus infinity to infinity x raised to n e raised to minus t x square by 2 dx is equal to 1 into 3 into 5 into dot 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 into n minus 1 upon t raised to n by 2 radical 2 pi upon t. Tell me the moment you get this, then we will see. By putting t is equal to 1, we get integral minus infinity to infinity x raised to n e raised to minus x square by 2 dx is equal to 1 into 3 into 5 into dot 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 into n minus 1. One denominator is gone times root of 2 pi. Okay. Our starting point was this, and we have reached this stage. Okay. Now the first formula that we have, Euler's integral formula, using integral 0 to infinity x raised to n e raised to minus x is equal to n factorial. This was for n positive integer. But now suppose we put n is equal to half. N is equal to half. Then we will get half factorial is equal to integral 0 to infinity x raised to half e raised to minus x dx. Correct? Now put u is equal to x raised to half and simplify. Check what you get. So half factorial is equal to integral 0 to infinity x raised to half e raised to minus x ds. If you put this, we get half factorial is equal to integral 0 to infinity u times e raised to minus u square into 2u du, which is equal to 2 times integral 0 to infinity u square e raised to minus u square du, which we can write as minus infinity to plus infinity u square e raised to minus u square du, which is equal to, I think you have got such a step in the first differentiation that you did earlier, and therefore this is equal to root 2 times pi divided by 2 raised to 3 by 2 if t is equal to 2. If you put in the first differentiation that you did in the earlier example, and now if you simplify this, you get root pi upon 2, 1 of factorial. So this particular theory of derivative under integral sign is giving us some very important results eventually required for your further studies. And there is a fashion that suddenly there could be some of these standard results provided in one of your questions and some sub questions are asked. Now I am searching for that function Gaussian. If this 2 pi is taken to the other side and the integral of that function from minus infinity to infinity dx is equal to 1. So over the entire x-axis, 1 upon, why is this important in probability theory? Maybe very soon we will also learn probability. It is 1 upon root 2 pi integral minus infinity to infinity e raised to minus x square upon 2 dx is equal to 1. And for all values of x from minus infinity to plus infinity, something which adds up to 1, and we want that probability to be eventually get added to the 1, all the small probabilities that we will have, all of them should add up to 1, and therefore this particular function is very important in probability theory. So that is what we just wanted to share. Now let me give you only one counter example where your direct substitution and derivative under integral sign is going to put you in trouble. If you have patience, I can give you one more example, but otherwise I will conclude. Okay, prove or disprove or maybe check whether it is valid or not. The substitution I will give integral 0 to infinity. Now we know sin x upon x dx is equal to pi by 2. Put x is equal to ty and check. After putting that substitution, you differentiate with respect to t and maybe get back to normal and check whether it makes sense or not. And I am expecting that it will not give you the correct result. Check. Okay. If we substitute x is equal to ty for t greater than 0, we will get the integral like sin ty upon y from 0 to infinity dy is equal to pi by 2. And if we apply derivative under integral sign to the LHS and RHS, derivative of RH is going to be 0. And no matter what values of t you have, etc., always this integral is going to be 0. That is what this statement is saying, which does not make sense. So this is one of the counter examples where the derivative under integral sign has failed. We can have one more counter example. The function itself, the function integral, whatever function of t and x that we have, if we make it not continuous time. I mean, if the surface is not continuous surface in three-dimensional space, then we might be in trouble while taking the differentiation. Because the first lecture we have assumed that the surface is such that there exists a tangent plane, and we want to study that tangent plane, and hence we are studying two tangents, one in x direction, another in y direction, and we get to know what is happening at that point on that surface. But if that surface is not good, such that there does not exist a tangent plane, then this theory that we have developed will be in trouble. And therefore, final thing that I want to write now is the theorem without proof, because we have done different applications and proof is really beyond our scope at the moment. In fact, all these applications are also beyond the scope of IIT Advanced. But if we learn them, if we do it many times, we will get to know how to solve the advanced problems easily. So here I'm in blue. You just note this theorem down, but need not have to mug it up or so. d dt integral a to b f of x comma t. So let me write down the theorem for the bigger function only, not for the constant one. Theorem d dt of integral a of t to b of t f of x comma t dt dx is equal to, I mean the statement is same, integral a to t bt del t of f of x comma t dx plus f of b comma t db by dt minus f of a comma t dA by dt if the following are satisfied. Maybe before this, what we should write a statement. What about a of t and b of t? If a of t and b of t are already both differentiable, why? Because we are using the derivatives here, so they must be differentiable functions. Then this, if the following conditions are satisfied. Condition number 1. There are alpha less than beta and C1 less than C2 such that f of x comma t and del t of f of x comma t are continuous on alpha comma beta cross C1 comma C2. I will try to explain the meaning of this. Second, we have a of t belonging to closed interval alpha comma beta and b of t belonging to closed interval alpha comma beta for all t belonging to open interval c1 comma C2. And the third condition, there are upper bounds mod f of x comma t is strictly going to be less than or equal to capital A of x, and del t of absolute value of del t of f of x comma t. This is also a function which is well behaved and is not going towards infinity. There exists another function which is an upper bound for x comma t belonging to alpha comma beta cross c1 comma c2, such that integral 0 to integral alpha to beta a of x dx and integral alpha to beta b of x dx exists because it's a dual. Okay, so this particular theorem specifies everything about when you can use derivative under integral sign and when it is going to fail. Essentially, the wording of all this is little complicated, but what it means is basically the surface that we have drawn in the first lecture should be well behaved. After time t, if A is going to some other place, A plus dA by dt into capital delta T, then the function A is well behaved, both differentiable, and the new function that you get by partially differentiating the function with respect to t also is well behaved. So what does this mean? Upper bound and lower bound. So in case of one dimensional analysis, we used to say, suppose a function disappears, y is equal to 1 upon x is not good at x is equal to 0, because from left and right the limits are not achieved. Y is equal to x square, if we take, still it is not really good at x is equal to 0 because it becomes unbounded. Limit exists but it is unbounded. So such kind of things should not happen in this two variable situation where the surface is there in front of you and it is continuous, there exists a tangent plane, then everything will be all right. But if you have a situation where the surface is asymptotic or going to plus infinity or infinity by infinity, somewhere it goes, then we will be in trouble as far as differentiation under integral sign is concerned. That is what is the story which is written in these three conditions. AT, BT are differentiable, and it is similar to, see, these functions must be continuous on this cross area, alpha comma beta cross C1 comma C2. Alpha comma beta are the points or the limits for x, C1 comma C2 are the limits for t. These are the limits for AT and BT, alpha comma beta, and so on. So how do you say that there must exist an upper bound? The way to say it in two variable calculus is there exists a function and their integral from alpha to beta exists. Their integral from alpha to beta exists for b of x. Now I would request not to get into more details of this or maybe proof of this etc. as I have instructed you yesterday, that now you should spend more time on problem solving.